Born a prince but destined to lead a nation, Moses defied the most powerful empire on earth to free his people from slavery. Against the might of Pharaoh and the gods of Egypt, he brought plagues, parted the sea, and led an exodus that would change history forever. Through trials in the wilderness, divine miracles, and the forging of a sacred covenant, a wandering people became a nation, and a man became a legend. This is the epic journey of faith, freedom, and destiny. This is the story of Moses. The Israelites were a people bound by faith, but broken by servitude. Under Egypt's rule, they toiled in the fields and cities, constructing monuments to gods they did not worship. The economy thrived on their labor, feeding the ambitions of a ruler who saw himself as divine. The pharaohs held absolute power, their rule enforced by priests, generals, and scribes who recorded their legacy in stone. But among the enslaved, a child was born, hidden among the reeds of the Nile, destined to change history. Moses was raised as an Egyptian prince, yet he carried the blood of the Hebrews. Trained in strategy, law, and the mysticism of the Egyptian gods, he lived in two worlds, one of power, one of suffering. But when the truth of his heritage was revealed, he made an impossible choice. To abandon the throne and embrace his enslaved brethren, he fled into exile, leaving behind the only life he had ever known. In the solitude of the wilderness, Moses encountered a force greater than any king, a voice from a burning bush that did not consume. It was a command, a divine call to return to Egypt and set his people free. Fear and doubt gripped him, but destiny does not wait for the ready. Armed only with faith and the promise of miracles, Moses journeyed back to the land of his birth to confront the most powerful ruler on earth. Standing before Pharaoh, Moses uttered the words that would shake an empire. "Let my people go." But Egypt's ruler, seeing Moses not as a prophet but as a rebel, refused. The economy depended on Israelite labor, and no god of slaves would dictate terms to a son of Ra. But then the plagues came. Water turned to blood, darkness swallowed the sun, and locusts devoured the land. Egypt trembled, yet Pharaoh's heart remained hardened. The final plague struck the heart of Egypt, the death of the firstborn. From the royal palace to the humblest home, no house was spared. But the Israelites, guided by divine instruction, marked their doors with lamb's blood. The angel of death passed over them, and a tradition was born, the Passover, a night of deliverance. Pharaoh, broken by grief, finally relented. "Go," he commanded. And so with haste, the Israelites gathered their families, their herds, and their faith, and fled into the desert. Freedom was in sight, but Egypt was not finished. Pharaoh's army pursued, chariots thundering across the sands, closing in on the fleeing multitude. Trapped between the sea and certain death, hope seemed lost, until the waters themselves parted. A dry path appeared, a corridor through the waves. The Israelites crossed, and as the Egyptians followed, the waters roared back, swallowing an empire's wrath beneath the waves. A people once enslaved now stood free upon the shores of destiny. But freedom came at a cost. The desert was merciless, and the people grew restless. They were no longer slaves, but they were not yet a nation. Water was scarce, food uncertain, and the faith that had led them through the sea now wavered in the sun-scorched land. Yet manna fell from the heavens, water burst from dry rock, and Moses led them forward. But leadership carried its own burdens. Every miracle brought more doubts. Every step closer to the promised land tested their will to endure. At the foot of Mount Sinai, The ground trembled as Moses ascended into the storm. There, amidst fire and cloud, he received the law, a covenant that would shape a people and define a faith. The Ten Commandments were more than rules. They were the foundation of justice, morality, and the identity of a nation. But below, impatience turned to rebellion, and a golden idol stood where faith had faltered. The journey was far from over. For 40 years, the Israelites wandered, a generation lost in the sands of time. Through wars, betrayals, and moments of divine intervention, they were forged into a people bound by law, faith, and the trials of their journey. Moses led them, but he would not enter the land promised to their fathers. His task was complete. The future now belonged to those who had been born in freedom. Standing upon a mountain, Moses gazed upon the land his people would inherit. It was a land of milk and honey, a new beginning, a promise fulfilled. The Israelites had found their home, but the lessons of the Exodus would echo through history. The memory of slavery, the gift of freedom, and the laws of Sinai would guide generations to come. Moses' journey had ended, but the story of his people had just begun.